Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the beautifully decorated garden, watching her best friend Emma dance with her new husband under the twinkling fairy lights. The champagne in her hand had gone warm, but she couldn't bring herself to take another sip. Everyone around her seemed to be part of a couple, laughing and spinning on the dance floor while she remained alone by the rose bushes. She had come to this wedding with such high hopes. Her boyfriend Marcus was supposed to be her date, but 3 days before the ceremony, he had broken up with her over text message. The memory still stung like a fresh wound. After 2 years together, he had simply written, "This isn't working anymore. I need space to figure things out." Emma had insisted she still come to the wedding. "You're my maid of honor," she had said over the phone. "I need you there, Marcus, or no Marcus." So here Sarah was, wearing the beautiful lavender dress they had picked out together, trying to smile and pretend her heart wasn't breaking every time she saw a happy couple. The wedding venue was stunning. The Riverside Manor had gardens that stretched down to a peaceful lake, and the ceremony had taken place under an archway of white roses and baby's breath. Everything was perfect, exactly how Emma had dreamed it would be. Sarah had helped plan every detail, from the menu to the music, and seeing it all come together should have filled her with joy. Instead, she felt hollow inside. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos she had taken earlier. Emma looked radiant in her flowing white gown, her dark hair swept up in an elegant bun with small pearls woven through it. The groom, David, couldn't stop smiling, and their happiness was infectious to everyone except Sarah. She felt like she was watching their joy from behind glass, unable to touch it or be part of it. A soft breeze rustled the leaves above her, and Sarah shivered slightly in her sleeveless dress. The reception was in full swing now, with the band playing romantic songs that made her chest ache. She considered leaving early, making up some excuse about not feeling well, but she couldn't abandon Emma on her special day. "Excuse me, but I believe you're my date for tonight." The deep voice startled her, and Sarah turned to see a man standing just a few feet away. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair styled perfectly and the kind of sharp jawline that belonged in magazines. He wore an expensive black suit that fit him like it was made specifically for his broad shoulders, and his dark eyes held an intensity that made her breath catch. She looked around, confused. "I think you have me mistaken for someone else. I'm here alone." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face from intimidating to charming. "No mistake. I saw you standing here by yourself, and I thought that was a crime at such a beautiful wedding. Alessandro Romano." He extended his hand to her. Sarah hesitated for a moment before shaking his hand. His grip was firm and warm. "Sarah Mitchell, and thank you, but really I'm fine on my own." "Nobody should be alone at a wedding," Alessandro said, his accent carrying just a hint of Italian. "It goes against the natural order of things. Love is in the air, music is playing, and beautiful women should be dancing." Despite her mood, Sarah felt a small smile tug at her lips. "That's a very romantic way of looking at it." "Romance is important," he said seriously. "Life is too short for anything else." He gestured toward the dance floor. "Would you honor me with a dance? I promise I won't step on your toes." Sarah glanced toward Emma, who was now cutting the cake with David. Her friend caught her eye and gave her an encouraging nod and thumbs up. Maybe one dance wouldn't hurt. It might even help her feel less like a third wheel at her own best friend's wedding. "All right," she said, setting her champagne glass on a nearby table. "But I should warn you, I'm not in the most festive mood tonight." Alessandro offered her his arm. "Then it's my job to change that." As they walked toward the dance floor, Sarah noticed how other people seemed to step aside for Alessandro. The men nodded respectfully, and the women's eyes followed him with obvious interest. There was something about the way he carried himself that commanded attention and respect. The band was playing a slow song, something soft and romantic that made the couples on the dance floor sway closer together. Alessandro placed one hand on Sarah's waist and took her hand with the other, leading her into an easy rhythm. "So, what brings you to David and Emma's wedding?" Sarah asked, trying to make conversation as they moved together. "Business connections," Alessandro replied smoothly. "David's family has been helpful with some of my ventures. And you? Besides being the most beautiful woman here tonight." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Emma is my best friend. I'm her maid of honor." "Ah, the maid of honor? That's an important role. You must care about her very much." "I do. We've been friends since college. She's like a sister to me." Alessandro spun her gently, and Sarah was surprised by how natural it felt to move with him. He was an excellent dancer, leading her with confidence, but never making her feel rushed or clumsy. "And yet you look sad," he observed, his dark eyes studying her face. "At a celebration of love, the maid of honor should be happy." Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "Just some personal stuff. Nothing that should ruin Emma's day." "A man?" Alessandro asked quietly. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak about Marcus without her voice breaking. "He's an fool," Alessandro said with such certainty that Sarah looked up at him in surprise. "Any man who would let you come to a wedding alone doesn't deserve you." "You don't even know me," Sarah protested, but his words warmed something cold inside her chest. "I know enough. I know you're loyal because you're here for your friend despite your own pain. I know you're strong because you're not hiding in the bathroom crying. And I know you're beautiful because every man at this wedding has been watching you tonight." Sarah glanced around and realized he might be right. Several men were indeed looking in her direction, though she wasn't sure if it was because of her or because of the commanding presence of the man holding her. "You're very smooth, Mr. Romano," she said. "Do you make a habit of rescuing lonely women at weddings?" Alessandro's expression grew serious for a moment. "I make a habit of recognizing when something precious is being overlooked." The song ended, but Alessandro didn't immediately let her go. For a moment, they stood there on the dance floor, and Sarah felt something shift between them. It wasn't just attraction, though that was certainly there. It was something deeper, a connection she couldn't quite name. "Would you like to get some air?" Alessandro asked. "It's getting warm in here." Sarah nodded, suddenly very aware of the heat of the crowd and the way her heart was beating faster than usual. They walked off the dance floor together, and Alessandro guided her toward a quieter part of the garden, away from the main reception area. The night air was cooler here, and Sarah could hear the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore. String lights were woven through the trees, creating a magical atmosphere that made everything feel like a fairy tale. "This is better," Alessandro said, loosening his tie slightly. Even that simple gesture was somehow elegant when he did it. "It's beautiful here," Sarah agreed, looking out over the water. "Emma chose the perfect venue." "Tell me about him," Alessandro said suddenly. Sarah looked at him in surprise. "Who?" "The man who broke your heart. What kind of person gives up someone like you?" Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Marcus. We were together for 2 years. I thought we were happy, but apparently I was wrong. He decided he needed space to figure things out, which I'm pretty sure means he found someone else." "Did he give you any warning? Any signs that he was unhappy?" Sarah thought about it. "Maybe. He had been working late more often, and he seemed distracted when we were together. But I thought it was just stress from his job. I never imagined he was planning to end things." Alessandro's jaw tightened, and for a moment, his expression was almost dangerous. A real man doesn't abandon someone he claims to care about. He talks through problems. He fights for what matters to him. "Maybe I didn't matter to him as much as I thought," Sarah said quietly. Or maybe he's a coward who doesn't know how to appreciate what he has. They walked along a stone path that wound between flower beds. The sounds of the reception grew fainter, replaced by the peaceful sounds of nightbirds and rustling leaves. "What about you?" Sarah asked. "Are you here with anyone?" Alessandro was quiet for a moment. "I prefer to keep my personal life separate from business occasions." Something in his tone suggested there was more to that story, but Sarah didn't push. She was grateful for his company and didn't want to pry into areas he clearly wanted to keep private. They came to a small gazebo overlooking the lake, and Alessandro gestured for her to sit on the bench inside. The moonlight reflected off the water, creating a shimmering path across the surface. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said as they sat down. "Of course." "Why did you really approach me tonight? I mean, there are plenty of other women here, many of whom aren't nursing broken hearts." Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the soft light. "Because when I saw you standing there alone, looking so beautiful, but so sad, something inside me wanted to protect you. I wanted to see you smile." "That's very sweet, but you don't know anything about me." "I know more than you think," Alessandro said softly. "I know you have kind eyes. I know you love your friend enough to put aside your own pain for her happiness. I know you have strength even when you don't feel strong." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness but from the unexpected kindness of this stranger. "You're going to make me cry, and I've been trying very hard not to do that tonight." Alessandro reached into his jacket and pulled out a handkerchief, offering it to her. The gesture was so old-fashioned and thoughtful that Sarah almost did start crying. "Thank you," she whispered, accepting the soft fabric. "Sarah," Alessandro said, and hearing her name in his accented voice sent a shiver through her. "I want to tell you something important." She looked up at him, surprised by the serious tone in his voice. "Tonight doesn't have to be about what you've lost. It can be about what you might find." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, the sound of Emma's laughter carried across the garden. The reception was still going strong, and Sarah realized they had been gone for quite a while. "I should probably get back," she said reluctantly. "Emma will wonder where I went." "Of course." Alessandro stood and offered her his hand. "But the night is still young." As they walked back toward the lights and music of the reception, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. This mysterious, charming man had appeared out of nowhere and made her feel beautiful and valued again. She didn't know who he really was or what he wanted, but for the first time since Marcus had broken up with her, she felt like maybe everything would be okay. The reception area came back into view, filled with dancing couples and laughing guests. Emma spotted them immediately and rushed over, her wedding dress flowing behind her like something from a dream. "Sarah! There you are! I was wondering where you disappeared to." Emma's eyes immediately went to Alessandro, taking in his expensive suit and commanding presence. "And who is this handsome gentleman?" "Emma. This is Alessandro Romano. Alessandro, my best friend Emma, the bride." Alessandro took Emma's hand and kissed it gently, a gesture that made Emma's eyes widen with delight. "Congratulations on your wedding. Your husband is a very lucky man." "Why, thank you. And thank you for keeping Sarah company. I was worried about her being here alone tonight." Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but Alessandro simply smiled. "It has been my absolute pleasure. Sarah is excellent company." "Well, you two should definitely have another dance," Emma said, practically glowing with matchmaker enthusiasm. "The band is about to play their last set." As if on cue, the band leader announced the final songs of the evening. Alessandro turned to Sarah with a questioning look. "Shall we?" he asked, offering his arm again. Sarah looked around at the magical scene one more time, the fairy lights, the happy couples, the celebration of love, and realized that maybe, just maybe, this night could end differently than it had started. "Yes," she said, taking his arm. "Let's dance." As they moved back onto the dance floor for what might be their last dance together, Sarah had no idea that Alessandro Romano was not just any businessman attending a wedding. She had no idea that his business connections were far more complicated and dangerous than she could imagine, and she certainly had no idea that by the end of the evening her entire life would be changed forever. The band played a haunting melody as Alessandro drew Sarah closer for their final dance. She could feel the warmth of his hand on her back, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat where her hand rested on his chest. Around them, other couples swayed in the dim light, but Sarah felt like they were the only two people in the world. "This has been the most unexpected evening," Sarah murmured, looking up into his dark eyes. "Sometimes the unexpected moments are the ones that change everything," Alessandro replied, his voice low and intimate. As the song ended, guests began to gather around Emma and David for their farewell. The newlyweds would be leaving soon for their honeymoon in Italy, and everyone wanted to say goodbye. Sarah felt a pang of sadness, knowing the magical evening was coming to an end. "I should help Emma with her things," Sarah said reluctantly, not wanting to leave Alessandro's side, but knowing her duties as maid of honor weren't finished. "Of course, I'll wait for you." Sarah spent the next 30 minutes helping Emma change out of her wedding dress and pack her overnight bag. Emma couldn't stop gushing about Alessandro, asking 100 questions about where Sarah had met him and whether she thought she'd see him again. "He's incredible, Sarah," Emma said, carefully folding her veil. "The way he looks at you, it's like you're the only woman in the room. And did you see how everyone seemed to know him? David said he's some kind of important businessman." "We just met tonight," Sarah protested, though her heart was racing at the thought of seeing Alessandro again. "Sometimes that's all it takes," Emma said with a knowing smile. "When David and I first met, I knew within 5 minutes that I was going to marry him." After Emma and David departed in a shower of rice and flower petals, the remaining guests began to disperse. Sarah found Alessandro waiting for her near the garden entrance, exactly where he had promised to be. Most of the other guests had left, and the staff was beginning to clean up the reception area. "How do you feel about getting some real food?" Alessandro asked. "I don't know about you, but wedding cake doesn't really constitute dinner." Sarah realized she was actually hungry. She had been too nervous and sad to eat much during the reception. "That sounds perfect, but most restaurants will be closed by now." Alessandro smiled mysteriously. "Leave that to me." 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself in the passenger seat of Alessandro's sleek black car, heading into the city. The car was clearly expensive. Everything from the leather seats to the sound system spoke of money and taste. Alessandro drove with the same confidence he did everything else, navigating the empty streets with ease. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked as they pulled up to an elegant Italian restaurant that was clearly closed, its windows dark and a closed sign prominently displayed. "Somewhere special," Alessandro said, getting out and coming around to open her door. To Sarah's amazement, Alessandro walked up to the restaurant's door and knocked. After a moment, an older man with graying hair opened the door and broke into a wide smile when he saw Alessandro. "Alessandro, what brings you here so late?" the man said in heavily accented English, embracing Alessandro warmly. "Sorry to bother you, Giuseppe, but I was hoping you might be able to help me out. I have a beautiful lady who deserves a proper meal." Giuseppe looked past Alessandro to Sarah and immediately brightened. "Ah, of course. Come in, come in. For you. Anything." The restaurant was dimly lit and intimate, with red tablecloths and candles flickering on each table. Giuseppe led them to a corner booth and immediately began bustling around, turning on soft music and lighting candles. "This is impossible," Sarah whispered to Alessandro as they sat down. "How did you know he would open the restaurant for us?" "Giuseppe is an old friend," Alessandro said simply. "His family has been very good to me over the years." Within minutes, Giuseppe was bringing them plates of food that smelled incredible. Homemade pasta with a rich tomato sauce, tender chicken prepared with herbs and wine, fresh bread that was still warm from the oven. He also produced a bottle of wine that looked expensive and old. "This is amazing," Sarah said, taking her first bite of the pasta. "But I feel terrible that he opened just for us." "Don't feel terrible. Giuseppe loves to cook, and he loves to see people enjoy his food. You're doing him a favor." As they ate, Alessandro asked Sarah about her life, her work, her dreams. She found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone in a long time. She told him about her job as a graphic designer, how she loved creating beautiful things, but sometimes felt like her work didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. She told him about her family, her parents who lived in a small town 3 hours away, and how she sometimes felt lost in the big city. "What about you?" Sarah asked as they shared a dessert of tiramisu that Giuseppe had insisted they try. "What kind of business are you in?" For the first time all evening, Alessandro hesitated. "Import and export," he said finally. "My family has business interests throughout Europe and here in the States." "That sounds interesting. What kinds of things do you import?" "Various things. Art, wine, specialty foods, anything there's a market for." Sarah sensed there was more to it than that, but she didn't want to pry. Everyone had parts of their lives they preferred to keep private, especially when you'd just met someone. "Do you travel a lot for work?" she asked instead. "More than I'd like sometimes, but it has its advantages. I've seen some beautiful places." Giuseppe approached their table with a warm smile. "How was everything?" "Perfect, as always," Alessandro replied, standing to shake the older man's hand. "Thank you for taking such good care of us." "It was my pleasure. And you," Giuseppe said, turning to Sarah. "You come back any time. Any friend of Alessandro's is family here." As they left the restaurant, Sarah felt like she was floating. The evening had been like something from a movie. The mysterious, charming man, the private dinner at a closed restaurant, the feeling that anything was possible. "I can't believe this night," she said as they walked slowly back to Alessandro's car. "A few hours ago, I was miserable and alone, and now—" "And now?" Alessandro prompted, stopping under a streetlight and turning to face her. "Now I feel like I'm dreaming." Alessandro stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Sarah, I want to see you again." "I'd like that too," she whispered, her heart pounding. "Tomorrow night, let me take you to dinner. Somewhere we can really talk." "Okay," Sarah breathed, unable to think of any reason to say no. Alessandro reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "Give me your number." Sarah recited her phone number, watching as he entered it into his contacts. When he handed her the phone to double-check it, she noticed that his contact list seemed unusually short for a businessman, and most of the names were just initials or first names. "I'll pick you up at 7, Alessandro said, taking his phone back. "Where do you live?" Sarah gave him her address, a modest apartment in a decent neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown. "Perfect." Alessandro leaned down and kissed her cheek softly. "Thank you for a wonderful evening, Sarah." As he drove her home, Sarah found herself studying his profile in the dim light from the dashboard. There was something about Alessandro that fascinated her, something that went beyond his obvious good looks and charm. He seemed older than his years, like someone who had seen and experienced more than most people. There was a sadness in his eyes sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking that made her want to reach out and comfort him. When they arrived at her apartment building, Alessandro walked her to her door like a perfect gentleman. "Sweet dreams, Sarah," he said, taking her hand and kissing it softly. "Thank you for everything tonight. You saved me from what could have been a really awful evening. The pleasure was all mine." Sarah watched from her window as Alessandro drove away, his taillights disappearing into the night. She couldn't stop smiling as she got ready for bed, replaying every moment of their time together. The next morning, Sarah woke up feeling better than she had in weeks. The sun was streaming through her windows, and for the first time since Marcus had broken up with her, she felt excited about the future instead of devastated about the past. Her phone rang as she was making coffee. It was Emma, calling from the airport before her flight to Italy. "Tell me everything," Emma demanded. "What happened after we left? Did Alessandro ask you out?" "We went to dinner," Sarah said, unable to keep the happiness out of her voice. "Emma, it was incredible. He had this restaurant owner open just for us, and we talked for hours. I knew it. I could see the way he was looking at you. Are you going to see him again?" "Tonight. He's taking me to dinner." "This is so exciting. You deserve this, Sarah. After what Marcus put you through, you deserve someone who treats you like a queen." After Emma hung up, Sarah spent the day in a happy daze. She went shopping for a new dress for her date, got her hair done, and found herself humming as she went about her errands. Several times, she caught herself thinking about the way Alessandro had looked at her, the way he had made her feel beautiful and special. But as evening approached, Sarah began to feel nervous. What did she really know about Alessandro Romano? He was charming and handsome and had shown her an amazing time, but he was also clearly wealthy and connected in ways she didn't understand. What if they had nothing in common beyond the magic of that first night? What if the chemistry she had felt was just the result of being emotional and vulnerable after Marcus? At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock at Sarah's door. She opened it to find Alessandro standing there with a bouquet of white roses, looking devastatingly handsome in a dark blue suit. "For you," he said, offering her the flowers. "They're beautiful," Sarah said, accepting the roses and breathing in their delicate fragrance. "Thank you. Are you ready?" Sarah nodded, grabbing her purse and locking her apartment door. Alessandro led her to his car and opened the passenger door for her, another old-fashioned gesture that made her feel special. As they drove through the city, Sarah noticed that Alessandro seemed more serious tonight, less relaxed than he had been at the wedding. He was still charming and attentive, but there was something weighing on his mind. "Is everything okay?" she asked as they stopped at a red light. Alessandro looked at her, and for a moment his expression was almost pained. "Sarah, there are things about me that you don't know, things that might change how you feel about spending time with me." Sarah's stomach fluttered with anxiety. "What kind of things?" "My work, my family. It's complicated." The light turned green, and Alessandro focused on driving again. Sarah waited for him to continue, but he seemed to be struggling with what to say. They pulled up to an elegant restaurant with a valet service. Alessandro handed his keys to the attendant, who greeted him by name and with obvious respect. Inside, the maitre d' immediately led them to a private table in a quiet corner, away from other diners. "Mr. Romano, your usual table," the maitre d' said. "Will you be having your regular wine tonight?" "That would be perfect, Marco. Thank you." As they settled at their table, Sarah looked around the restaurant. It was clearly expensive and exclusive, the kind of place where reservations had to be made weeks in advance. Yet Alessandro had obviously been able to get a table on short notice, and the staff treated him like royalty. "You come here often?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her tone light, despite her growing curiosity about Alessandro's background. Sometimes, when I need somewhere quiet to conduct business. What kind of business do you conduct over dinner? Alessandro was quiet for a long moment, studying the wine glass in his hands. Sarah, what I'm about to tell you might frighten you, but I care about you too much to lie. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Alessandro, you're scaring me. What is it? He looked up at her, his dark eyes intense and serious. My family's business isn't just import and export. We're connected to certain organizations that operate outside traditional business channels. Sarah stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. What do you mean, outside traditional channels? My family has been involved with what most people would call the Mafia for several generations, Alessandro said quietly. I'm what you might call a boss in the organization. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Alessandro Romano was in the Mafia? The charming, romantic man who had swept her off her feet at her best friend's wedding was a criminal? I don't understand, Sarah whispered. You're telling me you're a mobster? I'm telling you that my family has business interests that sometimes conflict with the law, Alessandro said carefully. I'm telling you that there are aspects of my life that are dangerous, and that being close to me might put you in danger too. Sarah felt like the room was spinning. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, ordinary people with normal lives and normal problems. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice barely audible. Because I'm falling in love with you, Alessandro said simply. And you deserve to know the truth before you decide whether you want to see me again. Sarah stared at Alessandro across the candlelit table, her mind struggling to process what he had just told her. The romantic dinner, the elegant restaurant, the way the staff treated him with such respect. It all made sense now, but in a way that terrified her. You're in love with me? She whispered, focusing on that part of his confession because it was easier than dealing with the rest. I know it sounds impossible, Alessandro said, leaning forward slightly. We've only known each other for one day, but from the moment I saw you standing alone at that wedding, something changed inside me. I've never felt anything like this before. Sarah's hands were shaking. She clasped them together in her lap, trying to steady herself. Alessandro, I don't know anything about this world you're talking about. I'm a graphic designer who lives in a one-bedroom apartment and drives a 10-year-old Honda. I don't know how to process what you're telling me. I know. And I understand if you want to walk away right now. I understand if you never want to see me again. Alessandro's voice was calm, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched. But I had to be honest with you. I couldn't keep lying about who I am. Sarah looked around the restaurant again, seeing it with new eyes. The other diners seemed to be giving their table a wide berth, and she noticed that two men in expensive suits were sitting at the bar, not drinking but watching. Watching Alessandro, and now watching her. Are those your people? She asked, nodding toward the bar. Alessandro glanced over and nodded. Security, they go everywhere with me. Because your life is in danger? Because in my line of work, you always have enemies. And because my family's safety is my responsibility. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This was real. Alessandro wasn't just telling her stories or trying to impress her. He was actually part of an organization she had only seen in movies and television shows. What exactly do you do? She asked quietly. Alessandro was silent for a moment, clearly choosing his words carefully. I oversee various business operations for my family. Some of them are completely legitimate. Restaurants, construction companies, import businesses. Others exist in what you might call gray areas. Illegal areas, you mean? Sometimes. Sarah picked up her wine glass with trembling hands and took a sip, hoping the alcohol might calm her nerves. Have you ever hurt anyone? Alessandro's expression grew hard. I protect what's mine, Sarah. My family, my people, my interests. I do whatever is necessary to keep them safe. It wasn't really an answer, but it was answer enough. Sarah understood that Alessandro Romano was not just a businessman with some shady connections. He was dangerous, powerful, and involved in things that could get her arrested, hurt, or worse. I need some air, Sarah said suddenly, standing up from the table. Alessandro immediately rose as well. Of course. Let me walk with you. No, Sarah said quickly, then softened her tone when she saw the hurt flash across his face. I mean, I need a minute to think. Alone. Alessandro nodded and sat back down, though Sarah could see it was difficult for him. I'll be right here. Sarah walked through the restaurant toward the ladies' room, her mind racing. In the bathroom, she splashed cool water on her face and stared at herself in the mirror. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem was getting over a breakup. Now she was apparently being pursued by a man who had just confessed to being in the Mafia. She thought about Marcus, about their safe, predictable relationship. He had been an accountant who played golf on weekends and always ordered the same thing at restaurants. Being with him had been comfortable, easy, boring. Alessandro was the opposite of everything Marcus had been. Exciting, mysterious, dangerous. When Sarah returned to the table, Alessandro was sitting exactly as she had left him, his wine untouched, his attention focused entirely on her. I have questions, she said as she sat down. I'll answer any questions you have. Are you going to get arrested? Alessandro almost smiled at that. No more than usual. My lawyers are very good at what they do. Are you married? Do you have a family? No wife, no children. I've been too focused on business to think about settling down. Until now. Sarah felt a flutter in her stomach at the intensity in his voice. What about your family? Are they all involved in this? My father runs the organization, but he's getting older. My younger brother handles the legitimate businesses. My sister lives in Italy with her husband and children, far away from all of this. And you? What's your role? Alessandro was quiet for a moment. I'm being groomed to take over for my father when he retires. The family business will be my responsibility. So this isn't something you could just walk away from? No, Alessandro said simply. This is who I am, Sarah. It's who I've always been. Sarah stared at him, trying to reconcile the gentle, romantic man who had danced with her the night before with this powerful, dangerous figure he was describing. Why are you telling me all this? Why risk it? Because I've spent my entire life living in a world where everyone wants something from me. Money, power, protection, favors. But when you looked at me last night, you saw just a man. Not Alessandro Romano the boss, just Alessandro. I haven't felt that in years. Sarah's heart ached at the loneliness in his voice. Alessandro, I know what I'm asking of you, he continued. I know this complicates everything. But I also know that what I feel for you is real, and I think you feel something too. Sarah couldn't deny it. Despite everything he had just told her, despite the fear and confusion, she was still drawn to him. There was something about Alessandro that made her feel more alive than she had in years. I do feel something, she admitted quietly. But I'm scared. I would never let anything happen to you, Alessandro said fiercely. You would be under my protection always. But what kind of life would that be? Always looking over my shoulder, always wondering if someone might try to hurt me to get to you. Alessandro's expression grew pained. I won't lie to you. It wouldn't be an easy life, but it would be our life. The waiter appeared at their table, clearly nervous about approaching. Alessandro ordered for both of them without consulting the menu, and Sarah realized he probably ate here often enough to know it by heart. As they waited for their food, Sarah tried to imagine what her life would look like if she chose to be with Alessandro. She would have to quit her job, probably move to a different apartment, maybe a different city. She would have to learn to live with bodyguards and security measures and the constant knowledge that Alessandro's enemies might see her as a target. But she also thought about the way he had made her feel last night. Beautiful, cherished, protected. She thought about his old-fashioned manners, his genuine interest in her thoughts and feelings, the way he had gone out of his way to make her happy when she was hurting. "Tell me about the good parts," Sarah said suddenly. Alessandro looked confused. "What do you mean? You've told me about the dangerous parts, the illegal parts. Tell me about the good parts of your life." Alessandro's expression softened. "I have a house in the mountains where I go when I need to get away from everything. It's peaceful there, quiet. There's a lake where you can see the stars reflected in the water at night." "That sounds beautiful. My family, despite everything, is very close. Sunday dinners at my father's house with everyone together. My nephew learning to play soccer. My sister calling me to complain about her husband leaving dishes in the sink." Sarah smiled despite herself. "That sounds normal." "Because in many ways, we are normal. We're a family. We care about each other. We laugh together. We argue about stupid things. The business is just one part of who we are." Their food arrived, and they ate in contemplative silence for a while. Sarah found herself watching Alessandro, noting the way he cut his food with precise movements, the way he listened carefully to everything around them, even while focusing on her. There was a controlled intensity to everything he did that spoke of a man who was always alert, always ready for danger. "Can I ask you something personal?" Sarah said as they shared dessert. "Anything. Have you ever been in love before?" Alessandro shook his head. "I've had relationships, but they were always complicated by who I am, what I do. Women who wanted to be with me for the excitement or the money or the power, women who thought they could change me, or women who were trying to get information about my family's business." "That sounds lonely." "It was. That's why meeting you was so—" Alessandro searched for the right word. "Revolutionary." After dinner, Alessandro drove Sarah home in silence. She could tell he was giving her space to think, not wanting to pressure her for a decision. When they arrived at her apartment building, he walked her to her door once again. "Thank you for dinner," Sarah said quietly, "and for being honest with me." "What happens now?" Alessandro asked. Sarah looked up at him, this complicated, dangerous, romantic man who had turned her world upside down in less than 2 days. "I don't know," she admitted. "I need time to think." Alessandro nodded. "Take all the time you need. But Sarah, whatever you decide, know that last night was the best night of my life. Meeting you, dancing with you, talking with you. It reminded me that there are still beautiful things in the world." He leaned down and kissed her forehead gently, then walked back to his car without looking back. Sarah went upstairs to her apartment and sat on her couch, staring at the white roses Alessandro had given her. She picked up her phone several times to call Emma, but what would she say? That she had fallen for a man who was apparently a mafia boss? That she was actually considering entering a world she knew nothing about? Over the next 3 days, Alessandro called her twice, but didn't push when she said she needed more time. He sent flowers once, not roses this time, but a beautiful arrangement of lilies and orchids that came with a simple note, "Thinking of you. A." Sarah went to work, had lunch with friends, lived her normal life, but everything felt different now. She found herself looking at couples on the street and wondering if they had met under normal circumstances, if they had ever had to choose between safety and love. On the 4th day, Sarah's decision was made for her. She was leaving her office when she noticed a familiar black car parked across the street, Alessandro's car. But as she watched, she saw him get out and start walking toward her building, and she realized something was wrong. His movements were urgent, almost frantic. Sarah ran down the street toward him. "Alessandro, what's wrong?" When he saw her, relief flooded his features. "Sarah, thank God. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. What's going on?" Alessandro took her hands in his, and she could feel that they were shaking slightly. "There was a threat made against me today. Someone mentioned your name. I had to make sure you were safe." Sarah felt her blood run cold. "Someone threatened me?" "My enemies know about you now. They know you matter to me." Alessandro's jaw was tight with anger. "I should have stayed away from you. I should have protected you by leaving you alone." "But you didn't stay away," Sarah said quietly. "No. I was selfish. I wanted to be with you, and now you're in danger because of it." Sarah looked at this strong, powerful man who was clearly terrified for her safety, and something inside her shifted. She thought about the past 4 days, how empty they had felt without him. She thought about Marcus, who had never shown this kind of passion or protectiveness. She thought about her safe, predictable life and realized she didn't want safe anymore. "Alessandro," she said firmly, "take me home." He looked confused. "I'll have my people escort you to your apartment and then I'll arrange for protection." "No," Sarah interrupted. "Take me to your home, our home." Alessandro stared at her, hardly daring to believe what she was saying. "Sarah, are you sure? Once you're part of this world, there's no going back." Sarah thought about Emma's words at the wedding. "Sometimes you know within 5 minutes." She had known from the moment Alessandro approached her at the wedding that he was different, that he would change her life. She just hadn't known how much. "I'm sure," she said, stepping closer to him. "I choose you. I choose us. Whatever that means." Alessandro cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Right there on the busy street, with his security team watching and office workers walking past. It was a kiss full of relief and gratitude and love, a kiss that sealed a decision that would change both of their lives forever. When they broke apart, Alessandro rested his forehead against hers. "Are you really sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." 3 months later, Sarah stood in Alessandro's mountain house, looking out at the lake he had described. She was wearing a simple white dress, and Alessandro stood beside her in a black suit, holding her hand as a small group of family and friends watched them exchange vows. Emma was there, serving as her maid of honor once again, tears streaming down her face as she watched her best friend marry the mysterious man from the wedding. Alessandro's family had welcomed Sarah with warmth and protection, understanding that she was now part of their world and their responsibility. As they kissed to seal their marriage, Sarah thought about that night at the wedding when she had stood alone by the rose bushes, heartbroken and lost. She never could have imagined that the man who approached her with the simple words, "I'm your date tonight," would become the love of her life, her protector, and her partner in a world she was still learning to navigate. The life she had chosen wasn't easy. There were security measures and precautions and moments of fear. But there was also love deeper than anything she had ever imagined, a man who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe, and a family that had embraced her completely. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Alessandro whispered in her ear, "Do you regret it, choosing this life?" Sarah looked around at the beautiful setting, at the people who had become her family, at the man who had saved her from a life of settling for less than she deserved. "Never," she whispered back. "This is exactly where I belong." And as they spun together under the stars, Sarah knew she had found something worth every risk she had taken to get there.